good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 3, Episode 21, Ham Radio News and Updates, June 4th, 2025. Hope everyone is doing well this evening. Wanted to take some time. Last week, I worked over 60 hours last week. It was absolutely insane. I do apologize. I could not get to a show last Wednesday. So, also got my new teeth in and had my major dental surgery, and that was on May 16th. And recovery is progressing pretty well. Welcome, Cooley. Good to see you this afternoon. And welcome, Chris. 2-meter SSB radio. Cool. That's very good. Progressing very well. Heading on out to 3 weeks post-surgery. All in all, it's gone pretty well. Had to get stitches cut the other day, which was on the uncomfortable side. Let me just put it to you that way. So, but all in all, doing well. I'm on a soft diet for at least 3 to 4 months, and that's when I would get my permanent teeth put in. So all in all, the surgery went well. Dentist has been fantastic. Was one place they did my he has an in-house lab that did my temps, and things are progressing very well. I'm really pleased, and getting back some energy and just getting used to having something different in my mouth right now. So, but welcome, Cooley. Welcome, Chris. Good to see you guys this afternoon. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to spend some time on the Yaesu FTX-1F, and there's been a lot of videos come out about it, and I wanted to spend the show on it today because I thought it was pretty significant. And I think probably a lot of I've been real excited about it, but I'm also one now to not pull the trigger right away because I want to see how others dive into it and how it works for them. And I'm kind of like, we're just gonna take a look at things and see where things are. I mean, I have an IC705, and this is really, my thinking, it's really kind of like Yaesu's attempt at this, plus making it a base station as well. So we're going to kind of look at some things. Now, quite a few YouTubers have put videos out about it, and I kind of wanted to cover that. And I posted all this out on Ham Radio Basics on Facebook, so you guys can take a look at it. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. Okay. Now, the first thing I wanted to go ahead and do is, of course, Jason put out a great video comparing the field version with the Optima, which is really the base unit, and what the differences are between the two. And he did a great job on this. So definitely that's something you want to watch, so you can kind of learn what the differences basically are and how things are hooked up and everything. And again, the field is really just the head unit, and it's really a lot like the IC705. The Optima is the base unit, and he shows everything, how to hook things up, and does a real good job on that. Now, Mike K8MRD, and he's Ham Radio Tube now, did a POTA activation with his, and he took a good hike way back in a park to do a POTA activation with this. And what was the POTA activation went pretty well, but I think one of the things, and this is one of the things that I found, and I started finding more, that he had a problem with it. And his problem was he was trying to use the memory to, you can record memory, CQ, this, just do your thing. All right. And every time he was using it, it got stuck. It couldn't get out of a loop. And the only way he was able to get out of this was to shut the radio down and then turn it back on again. So I encourage you to watch this video. You can find out what's going on with that. That was real interesting to see that happened. So, I was kind of like keeping my ear to the ground, seeing if anybody else came out with anything about this. And sure enough, another gentleman here came up with, now he was doing trying to do he was in the menu system, and hit forward, and it shut down basically. And he had to, and it rebooted, and he ended up shutting the radio down, turning it back on, and it worked, but then it came back again. So he had some issues with that, with the menu system here. And then there was another gentleman reported. So, let me go down here. Okay, Yaesu did it again. It's not good. This gentleman right here, and I'm not familiar with a couple of these guys here that have done that. APRS had issues in getting that to work, and believe it or not, Yaesu actually found, hey Andy, good to see you. He did a video out there about this, and Yaesu found it, okay, and they went ahead and they did a reply to him regarding that. Now, Yaesu actually came out, and there's a video he did for Yaesu response, and he shows the text of the email. Now, he didn't even reach out to Yaesu. They just went back and they directly responded to him, which was a good thing, okay? You know, I didn't have any qualms or quarrels about this. And then Tech Prepper, he did a video out there, and basically he was having SWR issues with the FTX1, and he made the decision he's going to sell the radio because of these issues. And lo and behold, and I'm trying to find it, I don't think I posted this. And this is another one where having some menu issues as well too. One of the things that I think has been real interesting throughout all this right here, Yaesu has put out a firmware update for this, but in their response to response right here, they said that the fix would be applied. They'll have a fix in July. And okay, we're in June. Okay, so this is like several weeks away. And all of this says to me, and I think you guys know, I think Andy and Chris and Cooley, I think you guys know what I do for a living is I test software. And I've done that for public supermarkets for the past 12 years. And, you know, in my job, what I have to do is I have to thoroughly vet the software and to think outside the box and to try to break it. And, you know, that's basically what my job is as a software tester, is to try to break it. If I don't, you know, a lot of people, well, you're not doing your job well. But no, you know, if you tried everything and you're not breaking it, that's really good. That says it's really kind of bulletproof in terms of being able to, you know, do everything that it's supposed to do. And a lot of people have commented in several of these videos that they really don't think that Yaesu did its due diligence in testing the FTX1 before they released it. In other words, that software was not ready to go and ready for prime time. And I have a tendency to agree with them because, you know, when you put a product out like this, you want it to work, and you know people are going to put it through its paces. For example, you know, APRS, it should work on a radio like this. There shouldn't be any questions about that. And you know, there were issues with that. And Mike K8MRD, with the memory function, you should be able to record something, be able to hit that button, and it come out there. And instead it repeated itself, and you got to shut the radio down. One person said, and I guess the person with the menu problem said that he had to do to reflash it. In other words, just go get it back to its original form before it responded. And, you know, you shouldn't have to do these things with something that's brand new and it works. Now, Yaesu did respond with a firmware update, but it really kind of, as far as I know, didn't address a lot of this. And supposedly they have a firmware update coming out in July that will address a lot of this. And, you know, that's a concern. You know, you're spending $1,000, $1,200 on a radio like this, you want these things to work out of the box. And, I will say this, I give kudos to Yaesu for promptly responding to this issue, but I also give them minuses for putting this out before it was ready. All right. If you had to wait another month or so, I think they were in a rush. They wanted to get it out before Hamvention, and it came out literally at the same time as Hamvention. Same time. I mean, it was exactly the same time it became available to everybody. And I also heard there were some shipping issues and some other things, and HRO had some issues in getting them out, and just it's been a real kind of a crazy release. And and I'll go back here with ICOM with their release of their I think it's 7760 that was, they had the parts displayed in Hamvention, and it's been out for a while. It's probably been out for almost not quite a year or so. Really, from everything that I've seen. Now, granted, that's like has a $5,000 or $6,000 price tag, but it really hasn't had these kind of issues with it. And Jonioki, that's a good point. That and I'm not talking about, and I agree with you 100%. Now, and I kind of want to back up here a little bit. One of the radios that I ended up having to sell almost immediately after getting it was the Xiegu X6200, because that thing was just chock full of issues, and it just was just not a good radio. Okay, it just was not a good radio, and I had to sell it because it was not performing like it should. But I think, Jonioki, just to kind of answer your question here, I understand that, and that's for granted that some things, you're going to have some bugs, but there's been a lot, and and these have been a different variety. There was a memory issue, there was a menu issue, there was an SWR issue with this, there was a APRS issue with this. That's quite a lot. I mean, a couple is I think acceptable, and I think there's tolerance and an acceptance of granted that you'll get a certain amount of bugs, and I agree. That's a given with the new product release, but it shouldn't be in what I consider significant quantities. And I think it's significant quantities here. And I know there are some other ones out there. I didn't have a chance to get to all the videos to watch them, because I've went through these videos the past couple of days to take a look at things, and I wanted to make sure that these are issues, and they are issues. They're legit. And and again, I'm glad that Yaesu has responded already to this. I think that's great. But, I also think, again, when you're putting something out, when you're putting a product out like this, and you have to really thoroughly get that out. If I don't do my due diligence with my testing, okay, it can cost my company money. And, that's why I do my diligence with testing the software before it goes out into production. One of the things that I work on, and I can't be too specific, it's something that's in use by stores, and got to be super, 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 super sure that these kind of things are going to work. And it's kind of the same thing here, because, you're getting, ham radio, aficionados and hobbyists to go out there and to purchase this, and they want something that works, and they want it to work out of the box. Yeah, granted, it can have a couple of nits here and there, but you want it to work out of the box. And I'll go back to, and I think a lot of you guys know that, I have a drone channel as well, Build a Drone Reviewer. And one of the drones that came out within the past couple of years, the Mavic 3, when it originally released, it had an issue acquiring satellites, and it was a significant issue where, it took a few minutes. Now, they put in a fix right away for it and got it addressed immediately, which was great. But that was a faux pas on their part, on DJI's part. And it's kind of the same thing with Yaesu here. I wish that they'd have spent more time to do this, but they rushed it to market, and I think a lot of this had to do with Hamvention coming out. And they wanted to get this radio out there because, Hamvention is the largest ham radio convention in the United States, maybe even in the world. I don't know about Tokyo's, it may be a little bigger, but I mean, there's a significant amount of foot traffic there. They're going to see this, and a lot of people ended up buying the radio because HRO had it there. I think Gigaparts had it there. Maybe DX Engineering may have had it there. I mean, it's you shouldn't rush a radio to or a product because you're having a large convention and you want to sell the units, all right? Because it's going to kind of come back in your face, and I think it's really kind of come back in Yaesu's face, because I think they should have done their due diligence. For me, I'm putting every kind of break in the world on thinking about something like this, because this thing needs to be even more thoroughly vetted and more thoroughly tested. And I hope that some of the ham radio guys out there, like maybe Jason and Josh and Mike and others, really put this radio through its paces, because it's going to need it, and that's what it sounds like. And Yaesu menus are difficult enough as it is, and to have some of these glitches, even just with the menus and trying to get out of them, I mean, that's terribly frustrating. And you're trying to figure out a new radio, and it really kind of drives you crazy. So that's kind of my take on this right now. We're going to find out more as time goes on, and I hope we'll get some more information on this and find out what's going on here. I just think it's very frustrating to have something like this happen. So we'll keep our eyes and ears tuned and see what's going on out there, and I'll keep you guys up to date on everything. But this is really interesting, and I'll kind of say I'm a little disappointed again, because you put something out like this, you put a new product out, you want to make sure that as much as you possibly can, that we don't have any bugs. So that's kind of where things are right now with that, and with Yaesu. And I'm hoping that thank you, Cooley. I appreciate that. We're kind of hoping that things get better and get settled down with this. And I think, and my advice for everybody right now is, if you were thinking about pulling the trigger, wait until you watch, some of these guys that really put this radio through their paces. I know Mike from K at MRD has already had it out for a POD activation. I know Jason's is starting to use it as well too. And you want to take a look at it, not only just from being a field radio and being able to do POTA with it, but also as a base station as well, and how both of these work. If you're interested, we're interested in getting the Optima, you want to see how both of them work and how both of them operate. Yeah, Cooley, I'm with you on that. If I hit the lottery, that may be a possibility, but that's quite a few coins in the piggy bank is for a flex radio. Yeah, I think that's where we're at with that. So all in all, my recommendation right now, just kind of hold back on this. Watch some of the other ham YouTubers, Jason, Josh, Mike, others out there. I think maybe TO might be getting one, Smoking Ape. Watch these guys as they put this radio through its paces and see how things go. Because if there's going to be any more issues that we haven't already seen, they're going to flush them out. And, the sooner we can get this radio vetted and working like it should, the better it's going to be for Yaesu, the better it's going to be for the ham radio community being able to purchase something like this. So, stay tuned. I find out any more information about this, or I see any updates from Yaesu, I'm going to let you guys know. I'll get it posted out there, and we'll talk about it next week. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground for this, because I think it's important. I think it's important enough that, when you have a new product launch, like I said, I'm going back to that, the big radio that Icon put out last year, and it's around 5 or 6, and it has that separate head unit as well, and in a great amp or great bass unit. You can move it around. It's very flexible. It is expensive, but there really hasn't been a lot of what I would call negative press about that, except for maybe the price. A lot of people are, and of course, at that kind of a price, not everybody can afford something like that. But, it really didn't have the headaches that Yaesu is having with the FTX1 coming out. So stay tuned to that. We'll get you some more updates as they become available. Got some exciting news here locally for me. Most of you guys know I live in an HOA, and when I do my antenna thing, I set my Chameleon MPass 2.0 up, and have it up as long as I'm on the air, and then take it back down. Well, and I think I've talked to you guys also too about being able to we can use a flagpole as an antenna here. We're allowed to do that. And I still have obstacles, and I'm probably going to tackle that after I retire, which is going to be early next year, because it's going to involve. I'm going to have to hire some people to do this for me, because I can't do this, and I have to navigate through irrigation lines where I would put. I'd have no problem. I have no problem with finding a place out there and getting it set. The problem I have is running that coax back from there to the house, because I have irrigation lines and I have to navigate over the irrigation lines. So that's going to be real interesting. Plus, I want to set it in there deep enough, because we get our grass cut by, that's part of our HOA dues, is we get our grass cut for us. And these guys they zoom right through there. And I don't want to get that set, and then all of a sudden that coax gets, chopped to bits. So, so working on that. But what was real interesting was we have an emergency preparedness club here. We have probably about 20 or 30 clubs here, which is great. We have probably well over 1,000 people that live in the development. And one of the things that they wanted was they wanted to have some ham radio, licensed ham radio operators to form a local net here for communication purposes in case of a hurricane or other emergency. And they found out that there were 2 here, so they put the call out to have additional people, come on board with that. Right away I jumped. I had no idea that they were doing anything like this, and I got in touch with the one guy who's heading this up, and he's on vacation, and I'm going to get with him in a couple of weeks. And I told him what I have, and he's going to get back to me as soon as he gets back. We're going to meet up. And in there, I know there's a couple other guys. They're looking for at least 3 more, because they want to have some type of emergency communications if cell phone towers go down. They want to have a means, and internet goes down. They want to have a means and a capability of being able to communicate for the community purpose. And I agree. And I think this is a great thing. And I've always kind of been interested in it from personally, from a standpoint. That's how, and most of you guys know, that's how I got started with ham radio, is because of the emergency communications in the event of a hurricane. I didn't really face hurricanes up in Ohio. Winter blizzards, yeah, and tornadoes and stuff, but hurricanes, no. So I dove into it headlong, and now it's kind of going to be coming full circle for me. I wasn't, Aries is great for people that had that time, maybe retired people and that kind of thing, but that really wasn't going to float my boat. But something like this does, because it's local. It's right down to where I live, and it's something that will be able to provide a useful service to the community that I live in. So as I find out more information from this, I'm going to talk to the guy that's heading this up, and may even do a video, may even see about getting him and some of the other guys in on a video and putting it out on the channel for you guys, or maybe having them on a Wednesday. I think that might be good. I kind of like that idea. I think that would be a good idea. But I'm actually excited about this, because this is something where it's going to be beneficial to the area that I live in, and it can be really provide a very useful service in the event we have a disaster here. And God forbid, we're in hurricane season right now, and it's just, from June to November, you pay attention. I go out there. There's one of our the meteorologists that we have down here are cut above, and I say that with everything that's within me, because the ones up north are good, but these guys are pinpoint accurate, and they do an exceptional job with this hurricane tracking when we do get them. I pay attention to my local guy. I don't watch the Weather Channel. There's one local guy. He's been there for 30 years. The guy really knows his stuff. Yeah, Chris, exactly. And I'm really excited about this. So, stay tuned. I'll give you guys more updates on that after I meet with this gentleman. I'm real excited about it. He responded right back to me. So this is good. I'm really thinking that this is going to be something. It'll be great because I'll be able to provide a useful service back to the immediate community that I live in. And I think that's something that I was kind of looking for. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited. Of course, and I told him, I said, I got, a boatload of Bioeno backup batteries to use for things. I have a backup battery for my IC705. I have 2 batteries for that. I have 3 HTs, including my Yaesu FT-5DR. And probably thinking about getting some more HTs as well, too. So we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. Guys, I want to thank you so much for being patient and, having to watch that rebroadcast with Jason. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate that. Going through that surgery was a once in a lifetime experience. I really don't wish it on anybody, but thankfully all went well. I'm on the mend. In about maybe another 3 or 4 more months, I'll get my permanent teeth, as long as my implants heal up and everything. So yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, that's another option too, and I think that's going to be good. We're going to be excited. It's going to be exciting to actually be able to be a part of something like this and to really make a difference in the community that I live in. I'm truly excited about this. So, all right, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and go Panthers. Have a great day, and as always, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7 3s to all of you. Have a great